And welcome back to another Thursdays with Charlie, number 86 we're up to, the 27th of January, 2022. Just a couple of quick reminders. The 2022 calendars are in, and they're pretty much already gone out to people. So if you're interested in the 2022 calendar, we ask you to please stop by the church office during normal hours or pick it up on the weekend when you're here at Mass. There's probably about 40 of them left out of the 700 we started with, so we're glad we got them into many, many homes. We're going through the items that we received from the states, and we're almost out. So this weekend, if you go to Mass at the Riverside, we're going to have a special. We're going to pass out all sorts of information on the U.S. Virgin Islands, St. Thomas, St. John's, all of those beautiful islands in the Caribbean. So we'll be passing those out. And up at church, we have some of the remaining varieties of literature on the various other U.S. areas, the 50 states, where we got only one or two pamphlets from. So they're available at the church. We're going to close it out this weekend. We were able to actually pass out all of the literature we received, and what remained of the Maine and Ohio, we got a lot of things. We brought down to the Boys and Girls Club, and we made a donation, and perhaps they can get a little bit of cash for the maps and things in there and help them with their programs. On the weekend of February 12th and 13th, which is coming up in just a few weeks, the Bethlehem Woodcarvers will be here. They're only going to be at the Masses at the Riverside that weekend. So the Saturday 4 p.m. Mass and the Sunday 10 and 12 Masses at the Riverside on February 12th and 13th. The Bethlehem Woodcarvers will be here, and they'll bring down many of their beautiful olive wood products and other items from the Holy Land. So if you want to plan to stop by the Riverside on those 2 days, 12th or 13th, during our Mass times, before and after Mass, they will be available. And other events coming up. Kayvon's Comedy Show is here on the 6th of February, and that will be a Sunday afternoon at 4 p.m. Nevada time over in the Garces Center. He was here on July 4th, was a huge hit, and we look forward to this one being as big or bigger because our snowbirds are back in town. So if you have not yet gotten your tickets, pick them up at the church office during the week or when you come to Mass this weekend of January 29th and 30th, so you'd be ready for February 6th. Our Knights of Columbus that we've been announcing are having a golf outing on the 26th of February. The monies that are generated from that, some of them are going to be used to help with disaster relief for those affected by the tornadoes towards the end of last year. The golf outing will be at the El Rio Country Club, and that'll be on Saturday, the 26th of February. All of the details and all the numbers and information you need to sign up for that or get more information are in our bulletin. And some of you may recall from previous years, February 3rd is the Feast of St. Blaise, bishop and martyr from the early church. And one of the customs that go along with the Feast of St. Blaise is the day before it, on Candlemas Day, February 2nd, we would bless the candles symbolically to be used in the church throughout the year. Then on the Feast of St. Blaise, it's customary to give a blessing using the candles crossed over a person's throat, and to give them a blessing of the throat as a protection against diseases of the throat. And certainly in this time of the virus, it might be a good blessing. It reminds us to take care of ourselves as well as to ask God's intervention as well in our lives. And so since Thursday is the February 3rd, it occurs on a Thursday, not on a weekend, what we'll do is we will have the candles blessed and ready, and all the weekend masses on the weekend after February 3rd, that's the 5th and 6th of February, we'll bless your throats if you'd like to have them blessed before or after each of the masses, both here at the church or down at the Riverside. And looking forward to that beautiful weekend as well. Some people have inquired that they made a donation to our church in the form of checks a couple of weeks ago, and their checks have not yet cleared. We checked into that and we discovered that the deposit that we thought we made on the 10th of January, so that's following the weekend of 8th and 9th January, the deposit we brought to the bank on the 10th of January, the bank never deposited until this past week. And so anybody who gave us a check on the 8th or 9th of January, you should check your accounts. It should have cleared by now, but for some reason the bank held that deposit. We thought it had been deposited. They held it for 2 weeks and did not make the deposit. Probably you know from last weekend that I had celebrated my birthday on January the 19th, turning 74. And it's really a nice age to be. And I read a passage, and I left it in the bulletin for you last weekend, that it is a privilege to be getting older, a privilege that not everybody gets. And so I kind of like the thought of becoming more like a classic car, more like a fine wine. And there were many celebrations. In fact, I like to carry birthday celebrations all through the month, and I had a couple. I got taken out to Mr. D's Route 66 Diner up in Kingman. If you've never been there, it really is like a trip into the past. It's a real 50s style diner, and the food is quite good. Also made a trip up to Kingman again to Rickety Crickets and enjoyed the meal there. It probably wasn't very healthy since we had a lot of fried things, including a pound of French fries, but it was delicious. And discovered that there's a massive, huge Goodwill store up in Kingman. And I ended up buying a pile of stuff from them, so I was glad to be able to get to see that very, very much. I got a couple of interesting gifts for my birthday. I got a couple of birthday hats, the kind of cardboard cutesy things. My head just tends to be very round and large, so putting a hat on it really doesn't look really good. It looks like a Charlie Brown head in a hat. But I did get a beautiful glass from one of my friends. It's got a kind of an interesting statement, another year of infinite greatness. I don't know where I could use this very handily, but I think I will enjoy drinking out of it. And then several people, more than one, found bacon candy. And I think they found it online because I received several packages of this, and it looks enjoyable. I haven't tried it yet, and I'm not going to try it today, but I'll wait till later in the month and I'll give bacon candy a try. It sounds like a nice concept, though. Bacon is certainly enjoyable. And other people brought cakes or cookies, and one lady very kindly made a portion of eggplant parmesan, which was absolutely wonderful. Food gifts are always much appreciated and well received. A couple of feast days, saints' days, occur towards the end of the month of January. And I thought it would be nice to just take a look at 3 of those feast days that are coming up. One of them occurred yesterday, and that was the January 26th, the feast of St. Timothy. You might recall that in the Bible there are 2 letters there, 1 Timothy and 2 Timothy. Timothy didn't write them, he was the recipient of them, and most likely they were written by St. Paul. They were letters to Timothy. So 1 Timothy and 2 Timothy. Timothy had a Greek father, and his mother was identified in the scriptures as Eunice. And Timothy grew up much under the patronage of St. Paul. Paul probably even baptized him and most likely guided him to a leadership position in the church. And Timothy followed through very beautifully with that. The letters to Timothy, 1 Timothy and 2 Timothy that Paul wrote, were letters of advice, giving him instructions on things he should be doing to care for the community entrusted to him. And I've got a few little things in there. Paul mentions in there, I have fought the good fight. I have run the course. I have finished the race, as Paul was getting towards the end of his life. That's kind of a famous line from there. Paul looking back on his life and saying he's been successful in what he's done. He's given what he had to the Lord. He's made the most of the opportunities God has given to him. He also tells Timothy, very interestingly, make sure you drink a little wine for your stomach's sake. Apparently, Timothy was observing some kind of fasting, was avoiding alcoholic beverages, and Paul suggests, no, drink a little wine. It's good for your stomach. It's probably the only place in the Bible where drinking is actually encouraged, and it's encouraged in the very direct words, drink a little wine for your stomach's sake. Timothy took charge of a community at the direction of Paul when he was very, very young. And so Paul advises him in the letters too, don't let people take advantage of you because of your youth. You have the power of God behind you in leading the community. So don't let them take advantage of you because of your youth. My favorite passage from the letters to Timothy is the passage that comes from 2 Timothy, the second letter to Timothy, chapter 3, verses 16 and 17. And you probably will recognize it as I read it. All Scripture is inspired by God and is useful for teaching, for reproof, for correction, and for instruction in right living, that the man of God may be completely equipped for every good work. I think that's important. All Scripture is inspired by God. Sometimes we look at the Bible and we find passages and we say, well, what possible use is that to me? How does that help in my life to get closer to God? And maybe it's an historical passage or maybe it's an inspirational passage, but this idea that all of it comes from God. Maybe we can't use it right now, but maybe later on in life, or maybe it was something that mattered earlier in life. We need to look at it and find the usefulness. And sometimes it's to inspire, and sometimes it's to instruct, and sometimes it's to correct abuses or wrong ways of thinking. But look at the Scripture in that light, that all of it comes from God, and it has some use in our life that God has planned for. The second saint that I want to mention, his feast day is tomorrow, the 28th of January, and that's St. Thomas Aquinas. And I might point out that the 28th of January is also the birthday of one of our deacons. Deacon Richard Lambert was born on the 28th of January. I won't mention which year. I'll let him tell you that if he'd like to. He is older than I am, however, and you know that I'm 74. But 28th of January not only is his birthday, but it is the feast of St. Thomas Aquinas. St. Thomas Aquinas' feast day used to be the 7th of March. In fact, for many, many years it was the 7th of March, and when I was baptized back in 1948, I was baptized on the 7th of March, so I was baptized on the feast of St. Thomas. But in 1969, there was a revision of the Roman calendar of saints, and some saints got moved around a little bit. And so St. Thomas, because his feast day generally fell during Lent, being on March 7th, they felt that they might like to take him out of Lent so that it could be a more festive celebration. And St. Thomas' feast day got moved from March 7th to the 28th of January, where it has remained since 1969. St. Thomas Aquinas was born in 1225, and he died in 1274 on March 7th. That's why that was originally his feast day. When he was in school, he had a very slow process of learning. It seemed he didn't pick up things quickly, and in fact he earned the nickname the Dumb Ox, which is really kind of ironic when you think of the fact that he became one of the great thinkers in all of Western civilization. But as a youth in school, he was known as the Dumb Ox. One of his teachers, Albertus Magnus, said, "Someday you will hear that ox bellowing throughout the world." He kind of knew that Thomas Aquinas would come around. Thomas Aquinas became a Dominican, a member of the religious order that follows St. Dominic. His parents were not thrilled over that. They were not wanting him. In fact, they held him captive. They had him imprisoned rather than let him go and join the Dominicans. But he managed to escape, and he managed to follow through on his dream to become a Dominican preacher. St. Thomas Aquinas in stature was very, very wide. In fact, there's a famous story where they, in the dining room where the preachers and the other all the Dominicans gathered, they had to cut a circle out in the dining room table in order for Thomas to sit close enough to the table to eat because of the girth, the size of his stomach. I guess I could say if I try to get to St. Thomas' wisdom, I might also try to get to his girth someday. But so far we haven't had to cut tables apart for me, and that's a good thing. He became a very powerful preacher, but he's really known more for his writing than for his preaching. He wrote something that we know as the Summa Theologica, a gathering of the doctrines of the Church and our beliefs in God that he orderly arranged. Like St. Luke, he was trying to put things in an organized pattern. There are many quotes. If I were to choose quotes from St. Thomas, I could go on all day, but one that has always impressed me is this one. It's from his writings. St. Thomas wrote, "Evil is the absence of good where good should be present." Evil is a lack of something. It's not a positive anything. It's a lack of good where there should be good. And I think that's a good understanding of evil. Evil is not a positive presence. It's a lack. It shouldn't be there. There should be something good where something evil is kind of taking its place by removing the good that should be there. I've always liked St. Thomas' definition of evil. Very likely St. Thomas Aquinas is one of the most brilliant minds, not only in the church, but in Western civilization. And we're very glad to have had him as part of us, and we still study Thomistic philosophy, and his organization of theology and the Summa Theologica are still studied by priests and deacons preparing for their roles of service in the church. And the third saint that I want to mention, his feast day is on January 31st, the very last day of the month, and that's St. John Bosco. He was born in 1815, and he died at the age of 72 in 1888. He was born and lived in Italy. He's a founder of the Salesian order. And John Bosco's order, the Salesians, are very much involved in the education of youth. They started out very early on saying that the way to serve the church for them would be to work towards educating the youth of the church. John Bosco spent a long life, 72 years, working in education. He was probably one of the most innovative teachers of his day, and certainly one of the ones who believed very strongly in the goodness of the student, that the student just needed to be led down the right path, and the student would then be able to succeed. A couple of quotes that come to us from John Bosco that I think are significant. Remember that knowledge without morals is the soul's ruination. Just knowing what's right or what's wrong is not as important as actually following through with it, actually doing something about it. It's one thing to know the difference. It's another thing entirely to put it into practice. Another good quote from John Bosco is, "Another means to acquire knowledge is never to lose a moment of time. Time, my dear sons, is precious." think the value of time is something we appreciate very much as we grow older. We regard time as a precious commodity, something that should be used well and used wisely. Thinking of it as a way to acquire knowledge, to use time wisely helps us to acquire knowledge, I think is a good way of viewing education. We need to spend time. I remember when I was teaching high school and we'd be having a class. I taught mainly sophomores, although I did some seniors as well and some other grades in high school and grade school. But my sophomores were my favorite. One of my ideas was before an exam or a test during a marking period, I would always offer a prayer. And the prayer that I would say would always be the same. I would all get my class together, and before I passed out the test papers, I would say, all right, let's bow our heads and we'll pray to God. May this test truly show the amount of time and effort that I have put into my studies this marking period. And you could see the terror on some of the faces as they realized that they had just prayed against themselves if they hadn't studied during the marking period. We had prayed for a truthful outcome to show their time and effort that had gone into it. It was always a good way of approaching that. I want to end today by talking a little bit about something you'll see in your bulletins this weekend, and you might have heard talk of in the diocese and in the church at large. Pope Francis decided that he would like to conduct a synod on synodality. Let me just explain that as briefly as I can. A synod is a gathering of the church. Sometimes it's a gathering of clergy and priests and religious. Sometimes it's a gathering of the church, priests, religious, lay people, everybody. Well, Pope Francis envisions this synod to be a gathering of everybody. And it's going to run for 3 years. Beginning in 2021 at the very end of the year, and it's going to go all the way through 2022 and into 2023. So it's going to touch 3 years. And what it's going to be is not a specific approach to solving or touching on different specific issues. It's going to be a listening session throughout the church. So that's why it's called a synod on synodality. A synod would be a gathering of clergy, and in this case laity as well, to listen to one another, and this is going to be a synod on learning to listen, which is, I guess, the simplest way to put that. In order to do that, they're asking every parish to participate, and then every diocese to participate, and then every country in the world to participate, and then the church as a whole. And these are going to be passed up through all those layers. The parish portion of it is the first portion to be considered now. It actually began last fall with some discussions with the Priest Council in the Diocese of Las Vegas, which I was a part. And the part that we're asked to do now is a survey form, if you will, that they're asking all the parishioners to look at, and those that would like to complete it to do so. Now, the survey form is actually up on the diocesan website, so you could, if you're computer literate and would like to play along with that, you can go to the diocesan website, you can look at the survey on there, and you can fill it out. I thought it might be easier for us down here. I've actually printed it out on 2 sides of a piece of paper, and these are going to be enclosed in the parish bulletins this coming week. We're going to ask that anybody who would like to complete it, and for our visitors, whether you're a member of the parish or not, it does not matter. This is a basic listening tool that'd like to get everybody's opinion. And so we're asking anybody who gets a bulletin this weekend if you would consider filling it out and returning it to us within the next 2 weeks. You can take your time with it. I find filling out forms online on a computer to be somewhat difficult, I think I'm better off looking at it in paper and reading it. So the first page of it, the first side of it, is an explanation of what the synod is doing. And then it asks for some basic factual information. So I'd just like to go over it a little bit today and encourage you, if you'd like to fill it out, nobody has to, but if you'd like to fill it out, it would be helpful, and we would send these up to the diocese. We'd probably put them together and kind of coordinate them a little bit so that the thoughts are lined up and make sure that everybody's thought is heard. And so they first ask for your name, and that means first name and last name. And they ask for an email address. So should there be any desire to share the results or to question things, you'd have it. They'd be doing it by email, not by phone, not by letter. So no mailing addresses are involved, no phone numbers are involved, an email address if you have one. And the first question is age, and it's one of those things where are you between 16 and 30, or 31 and 45, or 46 and 60, or 61 through 75, where I fall in, or if you're 75 or above. Obviously, you're welcome to fill it out no matter what your age group might be. And at least it's not like some of those online forms where you have to kind of spin the dial to get back to your birth year to find how old you are in there. Just basically your age group. The question then is, and what is your gender? And there are only two genders. God made that decision for you before you were born. So are you male or are you female? And just check one. Then there is a question about ethnicity. The choices they give you on the form are white Caucasian, African American, black but not African American, and Hispanic or Latino, or a catch-all other for that. They're trying to get the responses in a group, so that's why the ethnicity is there. And then there are three basic questions, three areas where they ask you to make a comment. Please do it in simple terms. It doesn't have to be great prose. It doesn't have to be perfect sentences. It can just be phrases or lines. And the first section, the question is on communion. Not receiving Holy Communion, but communion, the idea of being together. How do we show a common mission and work together toward a common future, while at the same time embracing our diversity and differences within the Catholic Church? So how do we plan and move forward in mission while embracing our differences and diversity within the Catholic Church? And again, it could be good sentences, it could be phrases, it could be just a couple of words pieced together for ideas. The second question is about participation. What is our part in the church? How do we participate in the church's mission? How do we want to do this? How are we currently doing it? And how would we like to be currently doing it in the future? And again, there's a couple of lines to write in. It could be sentences. It could be just phrases of how you participate or how you would like to participate in the future. And the third area is mission, the mission of the church. How do we form, inspire, and engage all baptized Catholics in the work of the church so that we can have a participation that is full and active throughout our church, whether it be in worship or in the social works of the church or in everything that the church does in our communities and in our lives. Again, there's a space to fill in for all of those. You can just add a few words. Clear handwriting would be helpful. Printing would be also acceptable. Don't worry about sentence structure. It's just a matter of gathering these ideas. These ideas will be sent up to the Diocese of Las Vegas. All the parishes of Las Vegas will be submitting forms like this. They will be compiled by the diocese, and they will be sent up to the region, which our region is San Francisco and the states in the West. That region will contribute then to the United States Catholic Conference of Bishops. That will be then submitted up to Rome, and over the next 3 years till 2023, they'll be looking at this. Probably at the end of this, there'll be a document produced saying, this is what the churches in our world feel about these issues. Again, it'll be in your bulletin this weekend. Take a look at it. If you feel like filling it out, we'd appreciate that very much within the next 2 weeks. Well, it's time for Pascal to come and join us. And very appropriately, he brings us a passage from St. Thomas, his definition of evil. Malum Est Privatio Boni Ubi Debet Esse Bonum. Evil is the absence of good where there should be good present. Make sure we put all the good we can into the world, because that will leave no room for evil to thrive. Thank you, and God bless you, and thanks for joining us.